mashura. And they said, you know what we should do? I got an idea. We should make a hole in the hull of the ship. This will allow us to get water without disturbing those in the upper deck. Just think about it. Look at a little hole, and we'll just have a spring of water. And that spring of water will allow us to what? To make wudu, to get water to wash with. We want to cook down here. We can boil. We get water to boil. That works, right? That makes sense, doesn't it? Right? The prophet goes on to say, if the people in the upper part left the others to do what they proposed, Anta sha'nik, do whatever you want to do, whatever. Right? We're up in the upper deck. We don't care. You do whatever you want to do, and you're part of the ship. If they do that, they will all what? They will all perish. Because a little hole in the ship will ultimately do what? Sink the ship. But if they prevent them, no, you can't do it. And whoever's thinking about doing it, we're going to put you in jail. They will all survive. Even though those people downstairs might not like being told, might not like being told no. And this hadith was collected by Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala. So I just want to mention a few of the lessons from the hadith ala ujala. So the first one that jumps out is the use of parables. How often have we seen a hadith where the prophet starts out by saying, method, the likeness of, the parable of, the similitude of. مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم كمثل الجسد الواحد. He says the likeness, the parable, the similitude of the believers one to another in terms of their love, their mutual compassion, their mutual empathy or sympathy is the likeness of a single body. We also have the hadith where the prophet said, he said, مثل صاحب he said, مثل الرفيق الصالح ورفيق السيء كمثل حامل المسك ونافخ الخير. He said the likeness of a good friend versus a bad friend is a likeness of someone who is a musk merchant or a fragrance merchant, and the one who does what? He's an ironsmith, right? He gave that the example. And the Prophet ﷺ, he gives these examples because people need practical examples to correctly understand and apply spiritual concepts. If it's a spiritual concept that's just stated, it remains what? A concept that a lot of people won't know how to take that concept off the theological or theoretical plane and practice it in their everyday life. And so it's a good idea for a person who's teaching to give what? A practical example, especially when times have changed significantly. It makes sense for a person to take it out of the first century of Hijrah into the 14th century of Hijrah. Y'all see that? And to apply it to modern context. And so people should not be opposed to the use of real life examples. Some people get upset. You start saying, hey, this happened in real life, and we should interpret that or understand that or use the verse from the Quran to understand it in this way. People get upset. Why are you always talking about what's going on today? Because we need to apply our deen to the real life and understand how we're supposed to move and operate as Muslims in our modern context. We can't live with this attitude that Islam is divorced from what? Our real human reality. You see what I'm saying? I go to work every day. I interact with non-Muslim co-workers, right? I work in my cubicle. My boss calls me to a meeting. We sit in the meeting. We sit in a certain way. We talk about certain things. Does my religion not have anything to do with that? Am I only a Muslim when I go into the third conference room, lock the door, and offer prayer? Is that the only time I'm Muslim? In that work environment? Or from the minute I walk into the workplace and leave the workplace, do I have to still operate as a Muslim? Well, I need to know what does that look like, right? And so we have to have these modern day examples, and that's how the Prophet was with his companions. He would give them examples so they could understand, especially if he understood their mentality and the way their minds worked, and he understood the harm of not using a practical example to what? to make the light go on. I'll give you an example. Famously, there was an Arabi. Arabi, these are the people like, they're not from al-Hadara. They're not from civilization. They're not from the urban areas, the developed areas where people have education and they have culture, and they're from, and they meet with a lot of different people. So they know a lot about the world, etc. So these are the people who are uncultured, they're unlettered, they're unlearned, and they're usually a little bit what? A little rough around the edges. So one of those people came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, "O Messenger of Allah, my wife just had a child, and the child was black. The child was dark skinned. This man was what? Fair skinned. His wife was fair skinned." He said, make this make sense. Now, Prophet knows what the man is saying. And you know what he's saying, right? He's saying, 1 plus 1 is not adding up to 2. And we're about to have a problem. And these are the type of people who, if they can't make it make sense, they're going to make it make sense with what? With bloodshed. Y'all see that? The Prophet understands what the deal is. So he asked the man, he said, "Do you have camels?" He said, "Yeah, I have camels. I got a lot of camels." He said, "What color are your camels?" He said, "Humr." He said, "They're red." He said, "Okay. MashaAllah." He said, "Do you have any camels that are black with some red in their blackness?" He said, "Yeah, I have a few of those." He said, "Well, how did that happen?" He said, "Well, how did that happen? Your camels are red. How you got a black camel with some red in it?" He said, "La'allahu nazal lahu irq." He said, perhaps, in the lineage of these camels, there was some black. There was some black, and it just so happened that what? From that lineage, that DNA, you know what I mean? It just so happened that some of that came out in this one camel. And he said, "So what do you think happened with your family? What do you think happened with your wife?" لَعَلَّهُ نَزْلَهَا إِرْقٍ. And the man, light bulb went on, and the man went away. Y'all see that? So I say all this to say is that these practical examples and the use of parables and similitudes is important in teaching and helping us take our religion off the theoretical plane and put it on the practical plane. And so we shouldn't be opposed to somebody saying, "Hey, this thing happened." Whether that thing happened in Venezuela, whether that thing happened in Gaza, whether that thing happened right here, what? In PICC. See what I'm saying? We should be comfortable with that and be actually appreciate that, because it helps us know how we should move and practice our religion. When that thing happened in DC and the Afghani brother was accused of killing the one guardsman and critically wounding the other one, that had to be talked about. How do we move and how do we understand that? If you get confronted by one of your coworkers, you need to know how to respond. The way your dean responds, it tells you to respond. And most of these people are not reading. They're not studying. They don't know. And so somebody's got to teach them. Somebody's got to take this practical example and do what? And apply their religion to it. How do we interpret? How do we move? Somebody comes to you and confronts you. How do you respond? Etc. But another thing that we benefit from the Hadith is the likeness of people sharing the same faith, is the likeness of people sharing the same seafaring vessel. Which means what the Prophet is basically saying is, you are your brother's keeper. And whatever affects others affects what? Affects you too, when it comes to what? The deen of Allah. And so we can't just have this attitude, live and let live, which a lot of us adopt, right? We come to the masjid and we see people doing the wrong thing. We see people doing something that they really shouldn't do in the house of Allah, and nobody says anything because we're worried about what? Offending other people's delicate sensibilities. And we create an environment where you can't tell anybody anything. You can't. People get mad. People get upset. People get to the point where their voices raise and they want to fight. We can't talk about just simple things like, Akhi, when you pray, you should pray with a sutra. You should pray with something in front of you so people can walk freely and nobody will cut your prayer. And somebody gets upset. Why you telling me about my prayer? I know to pray. I've been praying all my life. People get upset. It's just what? And it's just basic advice that will benefit the person themselves and will benefit what? It'll benefit everybody else. And it's basic advice, and we can't do these simple things. Nobody is calling anybody out their name. Nobody's calling people names. Nobody's attacking anyone or calling anyone dumb or saying they don't know their religion. We're just giving advice. We can't do that. We create an environment, and we create an environment where the people who give advice, they're the bad guy. The Prophet is saying, no, that's not the way it should be. In fact, he said the other hadith, by the same Rawi, Nu'man ibn Bashir, he said, Adin al-Siha. He said, religion is sincerity and giving sincere advice. He called it the religion. Meaning what? If we don't do it, we won't have a religion. If all of us are just quiet, we're going to be like the Jews and Christians. Look at the Christians. Just turn on one of those like Facebook pages or whatever they broadcast there. Watch how they worship. What is this? What is it? It's just singing. They got bands. They got, it's a bunch of people standing up and making noise and talking over the preacher while he's talking. It's like where is the worship of Isa alayhi salam, who went to the Garden of Gethsemane and fell on his face and prayed? He prostrated. Where's their prostration? Where's their ruku'ah? Where's their, you see that? None of that. And so I say all this to say is that, why is that? Because in their religion, truth is relative. And nobody can say anybody's wrong. Everybody can have a different interpretation. Azakumullah. I heard one of them say, and Azakumullah, and I'm just mentioning this, and I hate to even mouth these words, but I mentioned just to show you how ignorant they are. I heard one of them say, I don't know what it sounds like when God passes wind. What? This is what they say. This is how far they deviated. And no Christian can come and say, how can you say that about God? No Christian can say that. Because why? They've allowed their religion to become where the truth is relative. And I'm not wrong for saying that. If you don't like it, you shouldn't say it. But I can say it. Y'all see that? This is what we're going to become, God forbid, if we don't command good and forbid evil. If we allow ourselves to be the people, live and let live. But if you want to say that about God, that's up to you. This is the environment we're creating, instead of an environment where people feel like, no, hey, I can't go to the masjid and just do whatever I want to do. We also learn from the hadith, Muslims should seek fair and objective ways to divvy up prized possessions. There's something that people want, something people actively seek, something that's beneficial, mutually beneficial. We can't just say, hey, there's an elite, there's a nobility, there's an aristocracy. They get these things, right? And the other people get the leftovers. Notice they wanted to board the ship. And some people have to be on the top, people have to be on the bottom. They didn't look at the people and say, well, how much money do you make? What's your socioeconomic status? What's your educational level, right? They didn't do that. They just did what? They did qara, right? They just draw lots. Upper deck, lower deck, upper deck, lower deck, and that's it. So Muslims should be the same way, try to be as objective and fair as they possibly can, and they shouldn't have favoritism. Muslims should try to avoid favoritism and the appearance of favoritism. Good intentions are not enough to make one's actions good. Where do we see that from? Husn al-niyyah لا يدل على حسن الطريقات وحسن العمل. Where do we get that from? Good intentions are not enough to make your actions good. Where do we see that from?
In the story?
Where from the story, though?
Logic, I mean, that they can get water from.
Right, and they said we don't want to trouble, we don't want to vex, we don't want to annoy the people who are above us. Isn't that a good intention, not to want to annoy somebody? So they had good intentions to do something good or bad? Do something bad. If they put a hole in the ship, we all going to die. They can't say, oh, well, we had good intentions. No, you just sank the ship. And your good intentions don't what? Don't make up for what? The sinking of the ship. This is another thing too. Muslims do this all the time. They do something bad. They do something hurtful, damaging. And they say, oh, well, we had good intentions. Good intentions don't make your deeds good. You can't steal from the rich to give to the poor. It's still stealing. Y'all see that? It's still stealing. It will not make it not stealing. It will not make it a good deed, something you should be praised for. Because what? Because you had good intentions. But last but not least, and this is another thing that people have a hard time stomaching. Sometimes we need to be firm. Sometimes we need to tell people, no, stop, do not, this is not allowed. We don't allow this here. Sometimes you have to do that. We can't be the people who we don't have any standards. We let everything go. We never say no to anyone. We can't be those people. And we will never achieve what we have been put on this earth to achieve as individuals and as an ummah. If we don't learn that sometimes, not all the time, that's not the asl, that's not the original state of affairs. But sometimes we have to identify situations where what? We need to be firm. We need to say, nope, that's not happening here. And Ibn Taymiyyah, I just want to close with this. He has a very good analogy that he gives, again, showing you how we use parables to make people understand things. He gives a very, very good analogy of why this makes sense and why we should appreciate it and accept it and embrace it. He says, Al-mu'min lil-mu'min kal-yadayn taghsilu ihdahum al-ukhra. He said, the likeness of the believers, one believer to another believer, me to you, Abdul Majid, our likeness, me and you, to each other, is the likeness of two hands, one of them washing the other. Y'all see that? Now imagine, I want you to picture me as a diesel mechanic who doesn't wear latex gloves. I'm allergic to latex. So when I work on those engines, I put what? I put my hands in the machine. I put my hands in the engine. I put my hands in the carburetors. I do all that. And when I finish, what do my hands look like? Huh? But not any ordinary type of dirt. Not the type of dirt you just do this and your hands are clean. Right? They're greasy, and the grease is deep into what? Into the crevices of my hands. Right? I want y'all to picture that as I give you this example that Ibn Taymiyyah gave. He says, المؤمن للمؤمن كاليدين تغسل إحداهما الأخرى وقد لا ينقلع الوسخ إلا بنعم الخشونة. I'm going to ask you honestly, I'm getting that oil out of my hands by doing this. I'm getting that oil and grease and hydraulic fluid and all that out of my hands by doing this. I'm asking you, honestly, this is not a rhetorical question. I'm just doing this. Huh? What do I got to do? Right? I got to get a Brillo pad. Don't I? I got to get a Brillo pad. I got to get a scrub pad. He said you're not going to remove the dirt from one hand to another, except with what? With some pressing, with some rubbing, right? With some friction, with some shiddah. Y'all see that? Then he says, لكن ذلك يوجب النظافة والنعومة. He said, but that khushuna, that firmness, that roughness, that pressing, that rubbing, that scrubbing will bring about a level of cleanliness. نحمد منه ذلك التخشين. That because of it will be what? We'll praise the what? The scrubbing. We'll have good thoughts about the scrubbing. We'll say, man, that scrubbing that did the job. It got the job done. Y'all see that? We'll appreciate the what? The scrubbing. This is what it is. It's like for example, and this is the thing too, again, given a parable, because people can understand this, the light bulb will go on. You have a child who has the potential to be an all-A student. Graduate with a 4.0, blow away the SATs, and get an all-expense free ride to Harvard. But they're lazy. They're lazy. Because they're so smart, because everything comes so easy to them, they don't put in the extra work they could do, so they end up, instead of getting a 4.0, they end up with a 3.7. That's still very, very good. But because these universities, the competition It's so competitive. It's so hard to get in, especially if you're talking about one of these grants and one of these scholarships. It's very, very competitive. You got to be the best of the best. And so what do? You lean on them. You push them. You start taking away the Xbox. You start telling them they can't go out with their friends. Right? No soccer. No, you start taking things away as an incentive for them to what? To work harder. And sure enough, 3.98. 3.98. You're right there. And it was just enough to what? To push you over the finish line and get everything that we hoped and dreamed for you to achieve. And everybody in the family who saw how hard you were and how hard you drove him, even the child himself, says, thank you, Baba. Thank you, Baba, for pushing me. You see that? You see that? We appreciate what? The khushuna. We appreciate the scrubbing. Y'all see that? And so I say all this to say is that, yes, it's not how we should always be, but sometimes we have to be. We have to be firm. It's like, nope, can't do that. It's not happening. And we do that, why? For the benefit of what? Of everyone. And a lot of times for the benefit of the person that we're telling no. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who listen to the talk and follow the best of it. Thank you all for coming. As always, we have hospitality, we have some fruit, and inshallah we'll make tea because Dr. Omar didn't come. We'll make some tea, inshallah ta'ala.
No Q&A?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Just quick questions, take Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I don't know if this applies, but when you mentioned sutra, right? I noticed like on Fridays, after the khutbah is over and we pray, and we leave, I noticed a lot of people near the entrances, they decide to pray the sunnah prayer. So you already, people trying to go to work, there's bottlenecks here. Then you got people that just like, I mean, if they just waited a few minutes, there'd be less people, or if they moved to another section of the cellar, they could pray instead of like, I'm holding things in because no one wants to walk in front of someone.
Exactly.
Would it be too much if something could be said about that?
Yeah, I think I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you saying that. I never even thought about it, although I've experienced it, not being able to get out and so Jazakallah khair for reminding me, and hopefully next time I'm up here, I'll make that happen. I'll make that announcement. Jazakallah khair, I appreciate it.
In another masjid, I remember in New York, and it was a lot of people coming in and out. We made sections. Like, if you come in late, you need to go over there. Or if you want to pray sunnah, you need to go over there. You can't pray sunnah
by the doorway.
That they made it illegal. They will tell you to move.
MashaAllah.
They made it that certain sections, if you want to pray sunnah, we need to make some kind of section. This you can pray sunnah there.
Jazakallah khair.
Or if you come late. I mean, just think about it.
Jazakallah khair. I mean, I'll definitely make the announcement. I think one of our problems is, and again, we kind of touched on this in the khatira, is that we have to create an environment of compliance. So when you say, for example, no cell phones, put your cell phones on silent, people comply with that. People comply. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, and some people think it's impossible. It's impossible. You always gonna have a cell phone. I'm telling you, when I was in South Carolina, I went to this one masjid for Jumu'ah. I never heard a cell phone. I was there for 3 years the first time. I was there for 2 years the second time. I never heard a cell phone in 5 years. I never heard a cell phone. You can create a culture. We can do this. We can do this. Muslims can stand in a line. They can do it. But it needs constant reinforcement, and people have to all buy in. If you have dissenters, especially if you have dissenters who are in a position of authority, and they're like, no, people don't have to stand in line. Why? People can just stand and, the people who say yes and the people who don't want to comply will listen to the people who say, Malish, what's the big deal? You see that they'll listen to that. And so you need everybody to kind of be on the same page. Everybody's saying, yeah, we need to stand in line, and that's it. That's how we do it. And you create a culture where